Thank you, councillors. Thanks, staff. Thank you, members of the public, for joining us today. I declare this briefing session open, and for those who haven't come to a briefing session before, this session, there'll be no official decisions made, an opportunity to discuss next week's agenda and for elected members to ask any questions. We do have a couple of apologies today. The CEO is an apology, and we have our stand-in CEO, Gary Barber. Councillor Theresa Smith, who may be joining us. I believe she's trying to get online now. She may be joining us, but she is on approved leave. Councillor Benny McCleary is on approved leave. Councillor Steele is an apology. Councillor Gassop is an apology, and Councillor Giles is an apology. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest for tonight, councillors? Thank you. We do have, as we do in these briefing sessions, of course, we have the opportunity to go through the asking for the chairs from the relevant committees to make any comments. So just the chair from the policy committee, Cheryl, Councillor Kozisek. Sorry, obviously we're dealing with a number of those policies tonight, but anything further to add?
Not really, it's pretty well laid out, but to be honest, I was actually unwell for that meeting, so Councillor Giles chaired for me, and she's not here tonight, so
right. Okay.
I can't say a lot. I apologise.
Sure. We'll work our way through those policies when we get to them. And we did skip over, but no, we are doing that now. We do have two deputations, councillors, on the two items. We will deal with those when we get to them. Okay, running through the report. As I mentioned, there's a number of policies here, some with some adjustments, some without, and some new ones. I'll move through these relatively quickly because there are heaps, so just call out if there's any questions. So 10.1.1, Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we just have a bit more explanation around murals and public art and street art? Do we consider the large amount of street art that we've got as incidental, I guess, or is that covered under the city's, under this policy?
Acting CEO.
Through Mr. Mayor, probably have to get a more detailed response for you, Councillor Andrew. Some of the murals aren't city-owned assets, they're on private buildings. So it largely covers city-owned assets, but obviously the city has an interest in wanting them retained, so I'll look into that a bit further and we'll provide it during the week.
Thank you. 10.1.2. 10.1.3. 10.1.4. 10.1.5. 10.1.6. Sorry, Councillor Andrew, was that 10.1.6, 10.1.5?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, bushfire inspection and mitigation.
Yep, thank you.
Just a quick question, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I brought this one up before. Policy statement, the opening line is the council is committed. Is there any chance of having that changed to the city is committed, considering that a lot of references are made to the city within, or the city of Bunbury within the rest of the policy?
Acting CEO. Shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, it should be fine, we'll look into that.
Thank you. Questions on this one? 10.1.7. 10.1.8. 10.1.9. 10.1.10. Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to the council delegates, whilst it is obviously correct that we should be providing a report to council, however, I do believe that when councillors go to WALGA, it is also a learning environment for them, and I don't believe that during that WALGA conference that councillors should be having to write a report in their very own conference. That is an annual conference across the state, sir. So could we have those changes for next fortnight?
Yeah, so this is revoking the delegates report for other things. I think it talks about how councillors attending conferences, what their requirements are is picked up in the other policy that we have around elected members reporting things. Yeah, is there a requirement from to have a report from Walga, acting CEO? Are you aware of that? So this particular report won't pick that one up, Councillor Steck, but I'll just ask if there's something on that.
Just defer to Mr Galinski, Mr Mayor.
Sure, thanks, Mr Barber. Through you, Mr Mayor, yeah, it's certainly correct. The policy that Councillor Steck's referring to is the professional development of council members policy. So when a councillor attends a conference, there's a requirement under that policy, whether that's a Walga conference or otherwise, to provide a report back to council in that regard. The council delegate reports policy, which is before you today, relates to membership of external groups. Excuse me. So yes, that can include Walga as well, but then there's a number of other committees, Morrissey Homestead, Bunbury Regional Theatre being the Breck Board, and a host of others as well. I guess from an officer's perspective, our recommendation and subsequently the committee's recommendation in this regard was to revoke the policy insofar as clause 8.4 within your current agenda references delegates' reports. In my 10.5 years here, I don't think I've ever seen a single item come up under delegates' report, so it just seems like it's a bit of a moot point having the policy in place.
Question, Mr Mayor?
Yep. Yes, Councillor Steck.
I understand the content of that, so thank you for that explanation. However, Walga can be picked up with this, and I presume that probably instead of a delegates report, then I'll be probably headed towards the actual conference of Walga and to also revoke that requirement, and that would be probably subject to picking up out of another policy.
Yeah, that's in the policy around council
Yeah.
attending conferences. So this one will be removed, which gets a requirement. So thanks, Councillor Steck. Any other questions on that one? 10.1.11. Any questions on that? Thank you. 10.1.12. Any questions? Ten 1.13. I just had one on this, and probably it may just be a sticking point, but in the policy itself, and probably for the manager of governance through the acting CEO, I just note on the point 6 it says if 2 or more candidates receive the number of votes, steps 4 and 5 cannot be applied. The CEO draws their lots out to determine nominations. So that's fine if it's a lower. I'm just interested to know, and again, it probably doesn't come up till it happens. Let's say there's a position for 2 spots available. There's, say, 4 nominees. One nominee polls a lot of votes, and then there's a tie for second and third. What I'd read of this policy is that the entire lot would be drawn. Could you confirm that? And it's probably just a sticking point of wording through the acting CEO.
Yeah, sure, Mr Mayor. So the entire lot wouldn't be drawn. It would be just for the second position in that regard. And I guess just to clarify, the wording that we've used in that policy is verbatim out of the legislation when voting was still first past the post. So effectively, we've taken the process that was applied prior to, I think it was about 3 or 4 months ago when we're now with preferential voting or optional preferential voting, and we've just replicated the process.
Sure, thank you. And I'll note this also addresses the concerns around electronic voting for those who aren't there as well. So, all good. Any other questions on this one? Thank you. 10.3.1, councillors. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I guess acknowledging that council did have a briefing session on this again, but I think it's worth pointing out we do have an advocacy piece in this for purpose-built worker and student accommodation. However, considering that the federal government's announced the $10 billion housing fund, I think it's about to pass, or if it hasn't already passed, with 30,000 new houses, would the city not be better now looking at advocating for housing in general, considering there is such a housing crisis out there, and trying to get a piece of that large pie that the feds are making available? It
could be suggested to raise that next week, to amend that Councillor Andrew, but I'll just ask if the acting CEO has any further comment on whether or not that was discussed as part of the formalising the advocacy topics.
Through Mr Mayor. Yeah, it was discussed. I guess housing in general is general, and trying to then, the purpose of the advocacy is to try and target the advocacy through the various stakeholders in state and federal government. And obviously this was developed prior to that announcement, so probably worth re-looking at it, and maybe it could be a bit broader. But I think it probably still needs to hone in on perhaps low-cost housing options in accordance with that policy. But we can have a think about perhaps playing with that wording this week to see if we can tie that piece in.
If you have some suggestions, Councillor Andrew, as we suggested in previous weeks, if you can get some wording, well, we got 2 weeks effectively to the meeting, so you get some wording through and the staff think it's a good idea, obviously that can form part of the document, regardless, not requiring that next week. Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Same item on the item, which is the advocacy for purpose-built key worker and student accommodation options. The money that was set aside by the federal government is actually going $3 billion to each state, and also the state is also contributing. So I wouldn't mind if we could say, well, let's go further and do workshops, because identify areas in Bunbury, because we need to get our skates on that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's only one pot of money, and once other people put their bids in, we'll be hanging around for the last drabs. Just on that same item, for destination marketing campaign, have we gone back to see the MLA and Minister for Regional Development, Mr Don Punch, in relation to the visual signage, i.e. a digital sign, somewhere on the ball?
Yeah, I don't know if we can answer that directly. I'll ask the acting CEO. I know that, you know, part of this process is when we have those advocacy topics, if we're committed to these, there'll be some action points against those, which the CEO will come back and report to on what we're doing from there. But I'll ask the acting CEO if there's an answer to that direct question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it has been raised at informal discussions with the Minister and the local member. A report has been drafted via the BGTP, essentially looking at a package to a certain value for signage and marketing around the ball and the impacts of the ball. Once that's finalised, then it will certainly be circulated and then populated to the various ministers that would be relevant.
Further question, Councillor Stick?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I know that the CEO has provided us an update already on the economic development outside of the Perth metropolitan area. So further diversification will continue. Will we have a workshop on that in due course?
Yes.
So again, it comes back to us endorsing this next fortnight. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 10.32 is the 10.32 is the meeting schedule. Councillors, questions on this? I have one. Is this the same timing we normally do? I would have thought the new council might want to have some input into the meeting schedule. Is that this is the process it always takes around timing? So,
Through Mr Mayor, I might defer to Mr Galinsky.
Sure. Thanks, Mr Barber. Through you, Mr Mayor. This topic, I guess, was the subject of strategic briefing a couple of months back, and I'm just trying to recall whether you were actually there for that conversation. So the recommendation is consistent, I guess, with a general consensus that came from that. To answer your question specifically around timing, yes, we would do it prior to the election on the basis that I'll say a new council doesn't know what it doesn't know, if that makes any sense. So I guess they're guided by those councillors that are continuing post-October, bearing in mind that it's always the prerogative of the council to make a change at any time to its meeting structures.
thank you. All good? (10.3.3) It's a shame Councillor Giles isn't here. She could have a field day with this grammar corrections. Any questions? Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So will this be coming back again for the amendments to the local law, or is this us saying that this is the changes?
Acting CEO.
Through Mr Mayor, Mr Glinksey again, if that's okay.
Thanks, Mr Barber. Through you, Mr Mayor. So this report is for the council to make undertakings to commit to what it will do to the Joint Standing Committee. Next council round, there will be a report with an amendment local law to, in effect, enact those undertakings.
Thank you. 10.3.4, questions? Thank you. 10.3.5, questions? Thank you. 10.4.1. And although I note the proponent isn't here, they have emailed saying they were supportive of this, and the homeowner and occupier are both here as well, who aren't making a deputation, but if they wanted to have a chat with them afterwards, feel free to. Any questions on this, councillors? Thank you. 10.4.2. Mr. Tom Busher. Please join us. So you have a deputation now to present to council, Mr. Busher. Obviously you have up to 10 minutes. It's a deputation, so you can make your points. It's not a back and forth, unfortunately, in this forum, but feel free to raise any questions or make any comments you need.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I don't think I'll go anywhere near your 10 minutes. Look, my attendance is really whether you have any questions on this project or about what our club is pursuing here. We have a bigger vision of being able to revamp our club facilities there. They were built in about 1973, so they've done their 50 years of service in there. They were built as what might described at the time to be almost bomb-proof by those that did it back in the days when you had volunteers that got in there, and yeah, some of the materials they did get in there, when you go look at the RSJs, I'm amazed as to what they managed to do for their time period. But what it is we have got to the point where in contemporary standards, particularly taking on female football in there has been one of the things that our club has done. Also in the last about 11 years, we've grown from having 8 junior teams to now 21. We go from having Auskick, where we used to get about 25 to 30 kids, to running about 140 participants on Friday nights for that. And then also as a senior club growing, all up there's about 700 participants at our club. In some ways, we almost run the same numbers that other sporting associations do overall. We have done projects previously in partnership with the City of Bunbury, where we went and sub-drained the entire oval about 3 years over there ago in there, and that's been very successful. Again, trying to get surfaces, facilities, that's really the real challenge, I think, for all sporting groups in here. We will be looking at other funding sources. We will probably be coming to other council meetings over the next couple of years as we go through this, and also looking at some of the recent announcements made at the federal level for women's participation in sport, particularly on the back of the Matildas' success. That funding program's well there. What we have got in front of you here, though, is an application for the CSRFF grants. We're not asking for a contribution from the city at this time towards the works. We are looking, though, if this full goes ahead, to have up to the facility to be able to draw $100,000 for a self-supporting loan on top of the $200,000 cash component that we're already committing to the project. So I could talk on and on about it, but it's more a matter if you do have any questions, I'm quite happy to take them here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. As I mentioned, unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity to have a Q&A. I'm sure if any elected members have questions, though, they can do afterwards. But thank you, and congratulations on the ongoing success of Bunbury Footy Club. Are there any questions for staff members from elected members? All good? Easy, Tom?
Yep.
Thank you.
So thanks also for your staff. They've been great assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. We appreciate that. We will decide on that next, in 2 weeks' time. We have a week off next week. 10-4-3 and Bunbury Netball. Mr Jones.
Thank you all. In a similar vein, we're looking to revamp our courts, and essentially this project's sort of been a long time coming. We have 14 courts existing at the moment, 2 of which we haven't been able to use for the last 6 or 7 years. We were initially looking at just simple resurface and lighting, but given current standards and what we are expected to do, etc., when we try and hold championships, we've had to expand that project. So now we're looking at drainage and runoffs and moving fences and all sorts of things. So the project has certainly escalated well beyond what we had anticipated. But all of the infrastructure that we're looking at is at least 45 and 50 years old, getting towards the end of its use by date. We're really struggling to keep it, I suppose, managed and maintained in its current format. So we're looking for whatever assistance we can to try to revamp the courts and provide another 25 years or 30 years or whatever we can to future-proof the netball courts at Bunbury. And we're very happy in the outdoor setting as opposed to many others who are looking at indoors. And we're just very happy that we've been able to get this to this point and been able to secure the services from the council and the city itself. And we're happy to assist in any way we can to see the project through to fruition. So if there are any questions at any time that people have, then please feel free to contact us. We're happy to support or help or do whatever we need to. We've been doing that for quite some time independently and happy to continue, and certainly hopefully enjoy the fruits of a wonderful project if we can get it to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham, and also well done and congratulations to you and your committee for Bunbury Netball's continued success. Any questions on item 10.4.3, councillors? Easy. Again, we'll deal with that one next week. We do have a couple of matters to deal with behind closed doors, so those who have joined us, thank you, but we will be dealing with these items. Feel free to, if you want to speak to any elected members afterwards, feel free to grab a seat in the lobby and we'll be back after this, but at this stage we'll be closing the meeting to the public. So thank you for joining.